Hello, this is Debbie, and this is Light Up Your Worth. I am so happy that you are here with me this week and excited to bring you my guest and friend, Kimberly Crossland. Kimberly is a copywriter, a content creator, a best-selling author who helps freedom-focused entrepreneurs use their voice to build a business. Her work aims to help others get excited about life again through the power of strategic, thoughtful copy and content. In her free time, you can find her on the road in her RV or on the trails looking for new adventures with her two boys. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. I've been in Kimberly's programs and learned so much as an entrepreneur. It made a big difference in my confidence to accept my uniqueness.
I love that. And such a compliment to me to be able to hear that. So I just adore the heck out of you, which you know already, but thank you. And it's been such a great gift for me to be able to get to know you through those programs. So thanks for being part of it.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful. And one of the things that you were so gifted in is your ability to tell stories, right? Like you are a natural storyteller. I can envision you as a small child sitting around the campfire.
What's funny is that's not what happened in my childhood. I appreciate hearing that from you. As a child, I was quiet and I was very shy, and I did not speak up very often in most settings. Specifically in school, I was very reserved. Maybe that experience is why I'm doing what I'm doing now. And no, people want to hear from you, and you have such a story to tell. The more I hear other people's stories like yours, it it lights me up inside, not to use your podcast name, but it really does because it sparks something within us that brings people together and forms that connection. And stories have such a power behind them that I don't think we often realize it until you start to live it and you start to get into this world and you can really see, oh my gosh, this is so much more than I thought.
hmm And it's great to hear a story because you just like you feel yourself move forward in your chairs, or you just want to hear that. And being able to learn that gift of how you encourage storytelling as a way of expressing ourselves. What have you found with the power of storytelling? I know you really emphasize that for us.
Yeah, I'm not a neuroscientist by any stretch, but I'm fascinated by how the brain works.
hmm
And one of the ways that the brain works and how it relates specifically to storytelling is when you have that lived human experience that you're telling other people, you're doing two things to the brain. First, you're triggering that logical side of the brain. We can see what is happening in the weather. We know what it's like when it rains, but you're
hmm
also triggering that emotional side of the brain. And having those two work at the same time is what's
hmm
really going to help cement your story, your personality, your brand into someone else's mind. Because now they're not only hearing the facts and hearing what it is you offer and hearing what it is that you're doing, but they're actually living it with you. And so I brought up the weather, for example.
hmm
I lived in Denmark for 4 years. Danes joke that you can't have a conversation without talking about the weather. There's something to it. When you think back to core memories, you often remember what the weather was like because that is something you felt, you saw, you probably smelled. You and I are in Arizona, so we smell
Yeah.
those rains. Those
Yep.
desert rains are
Oh, it's
the
so
best smell,
good.
so good. But
Mhm.
you have all these senses going, and then you position that in your brain with what is happening at the time. For example, think back to your favorite birthday growing up. I remember swinging that piñata in my parents' driveway at my birthday. It was an Olympic themed birthday because I was born in July. And so it was probably an Olympic year, I'm guessing. And so we had an Olympic themed birthday and then went outside and did the piñata. And it actually was not hot. And I remember it being like a big deal that it was not excessively hot. And then we
Yeah.
had a beautiful monsoon come in later that afternoon. And the fact that you can remember the weather with that story is because it has that emotional and that logical connection to it. And
Mm.
that's why with your marketing and writing, whether you're speaking on a podcast or you're writing a newsletter, having those stories helps to trigger that in your reader, listener, or viewer because they're there with you in that story. I heard good advice if you're writing a book, for example. My focus is primarily on short form content or what I call origin content, which is where everything feeds back to, and that's like a podcast or a blog. But if you also look at writing a book, which I have done, I am a
Mm-hmm.
best-selling author. Everything starts with the first chapter is usually where was the core thing happening? And you're putting somebody in that moment with you. And that again is triggering that emotional and that logical side. So they have this instant connection.
Mm.
And then they want to continue to read your story. They want to continue on with you. Same thing with marketing. I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but I get really excited about this because
No,
there's
and
so
you
much
can
power
tell.
behind it.
It is, because I start thinking about that. What I found interesting is how do you remember all those details about the story? As you were talking, I had a memory flashback of my birthday in the 70s. And we were doing the bump, right? So I have all my little friends over, and we're standing next to each other, and you go down the line and do your own little version of the dance. My grandmother was there, and she was pretty stoic, and she did it with us.
I love
I
that.
never remember her doing that ever before, ever since. She was just not that kind of a grandmother. And so you were talking about that, and I got that sense of my own birthday. Now, because you like that creativity, but how do you capture, like, how do you remember? I can remember what I'm wearing. I can remember where we were in the house. But sometimes when you sit down to go write, you can't, you're like trying to, I don't know, you get stuck. How do you remember those strong elements in personal experience fluidly storytelling?
That's a good question. I have my phone to write down stories when they happen. For example, a few weeks ago, my husband and I were having a date on our mountain biking trail that's very close to our house. We're very blessed for that. And I remember writing on the trails and I was like, oh, this would make a good story for my newsletter. Oh, I've got to write this down. Specifically, there was a snake that popped in front of my husband on the trail. He thankfully went first and it goes much faster than me. And so I was riding up and he was stopped. I was like, everything okay? He's like, yeah, but you're going to want to stay to the right. Almost had a heart attack. And knowing my husband as well as I do, I was like, oh, there
Mhm.
must have been a snake on the trail. Exactly. There's a snake that had just gone in front of him. And he was like, so if you go this way, the snake went that way and you can avoid him. And I was like, you know what? There's something here. Here's my story. And so I wrote at the end of the ride, I wrote that down. And the story that I tied back to specifically my offer, which is helping people tell their story. I thought, how helpful is it to have somebody that's a few steps ahead on that journey than you? And kind of can see these danger moments or see these points where you might encounter something you're not expecting, like a snake, and
Mm-hmm.
it can guide you safely so that you don't get bit. You don't roll over something that's going to, spike your cortisol levels. They can help shepherd you around those moments and you can enjoy the ride more. Got to the end of the trail, pulled out my phone, wrote it down. I have this story stockpile on my phone because that's when I always have my phone with me for better or for worse. I always have my phone with me. I
Mm-hmm.
use a tool called Airtable. Designed it so that I can write down just a quick memory jog, go back, put in the notes about the details you were talking about, attach it to a lesson learned and a benefit for my business. So when it comes time several weeks later to sit down and say, what am I going to write about this week? What am I going to share? What's a story about this that I can pull from? I go back and look at that story stockpile. I've already done the hard work of capturing those memories and writing them down. I'm a firm believer in writing things down. Things fall out of my head
Mm-hmm.
all the time. But if I
Yes.
have it there, it comes back to me quickly.
Oh, I love that. That's a great tip.
You can use any
Airtable.
kind of
Okay.
like a spreadsheet
Okay.
type of software. So you
Uh-huh.
could use a
Okay.
Google Drive if that's easier to find. I know a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people just use the Notes app. I also use my Notes app for other things, but
Mm-hmm.
Airtable is just one of those tools that I prefer
Oh,
because I just have it
yeah.
already set up there. It's just easy for me to
Yeah.
use. The platform itself doesn't have to hang you up. It's really just where
Okay.
you're going to have that quick accessibility.
How can people get started in learning how to write with the story? Even when you're capturing the main elements, you've been doing it, but how do people get started? It's that getting going and trusting ourselves really on what we're doing because it's something new. I'm sure the listeners are like me. You start something new and you want somebody else looking at it. What am I supposed to capture? That's my roundabout question, right? I'm like getting stuck on my words, but
No, I know what you're asking. This is why I created my membership, the content club. So you can have somebody, not to give a plug, but this is because you're
Mhm,
not alone. This is why I want to share about it. You're not alone. It is something that is a challenge for a lot of people, especially if you're not a writer. I grew up wanting to write newsletters to my neighborhood about things that happened. I remember I was sleeping on my floor because when my friends came over for sleepovers, we'd sleep on the floor. And I felt we had blankets and whatnot, but
yeah.
on the floor level. I remember one morning I felt shaking. I woke up and on the news there was an earthquake. That's very uncommon in Arizona. In
Yeah.
California, that would be nothing. But to me, it was monumental. And so I got my pen out, my paper, and I started writing it down and I go and put it in the neighbors' mailboxes. This is before the internet. I'm a little older. So I didn't have the typing skills or couldn't send an email like now, but that's the start of it. I've been doing this since I was young. Not everybody has. And so I created the content club where I'll give you those frameworks each and every week for what to say or what kind of a story, how we're going to tie it back and fill in the blank kind of approach. And
Mhm,
it's a strategic approach. So they build on each other week after week. And so you're laying that runway. And then if you want the second set of eyes on it, you put it in the group and I'm happy to give feedback. And so it's asynchronous feedback that works really well and other people can chime in too. But there's one main framework that I want to give you right now that's easy to implement right now to answer your question about how do you get started with this. So the first part of if you look at my newsletters, you see this framework time and time again. I start pretty much every single newsletter with a story. I put you into my world because I want to form that relationship with you. You think of it like a conversation. And then it's easier to just say, oh, I'm sitting across a coffee shop from my friend, and I'm just going to tell the story of what happened. Just get it out of you, put it down on paper, and say, this is what I want my friend, the person that I'm talking to walk away with, to walk away knowing, and specific to your business, specific to your offer, specific to your niche, or whatever it is, whatever purpose you have for sending that letter.
mhm,
This I want you to walk away knowing, and end of the call to action. So it's a story, the takeaways, and then the call to action. If you start with that framework, you can start playing around with it. This is a great way to practice. I also have inside my content club, which I might be changing this and moving this particular piece out, but it's just a 30-day journaling prompt. If you want to really get started feeling comfortable with writing, just
mhm,
start writing every single day. And so for 30 days, it's just a journal prompt about your morning routine. There's so many stories in our morning routine. Why do we
mm,
do what we do in the morning? Right before we got on record, we were talking about going to play pickleball and then coming home and making homemade teas with herbs
mhm.
from your garden.
Yep.
That's a morning routine that could be a great story. That's something that's going to let people get to know you. You can draw lessons from it. You can tie it back to your business, however it makes sense for your business. But that's a great approach. And so if you start to write about that privately, you're going to get more and more confident with your writing. Then you can share them publicly using that framework of here's my story, here's the takeaway, here's the call to action. And
Mm,
then you can start to hit send and see how people respond. Get that feedback because chances are, what I've experienced time and time again, every single week that I hit send on my newsletter, I get people responding to me and I love it because chances are they're like, oh my gosh, I had an Olympic themed birthday too. Or, oh my goodness, I love pickleball. I don't know enough about pickleball to make a valid question out of that. But you get those responses and it opens the door to those conversations. The more conversations you start, the more you're going to get to know your reader, the more confidence you're going to have in hitting send the next week because you're going to know the person on the other side of the screen, be like, yes, I'm excited to share this with them. It
mhm,
starts to feel more of like the friendship that you want to have instead of just a one-sided transaction where you feel this intimidation of standing in the spotlight and you have no idea who's out there watching. That's scary. But we have to embrace that fear and hit send so that we can get those responses and get to know the people. I know, for example, two of my friends, I could not go with them, but they went up and there's one of their favorite podcasters was doing a live event. And then after that live event, they had a meet and greet. And I'm convinced that they had that meet and greet for the same reason. So that they did not feel like they're in the spotlight or
mhm.
hitting publish on a podcast and not knowing who is behind the microphone. We have to hit publish to form that audience, but we can invite responses. And when they come in, we build our own confidence with getting those back and saying, I'm making a difference. And this matters.
What a truth bomb. We can't get to know each other if we're just pushing things out, pushing things off, where people are like, I'm making offers, but it's in bringing them, getting them to really the know and trust in that factor. It's building the relationships. And we're both all about relationships. You give and give. I know that. And anybody who's been around you, that's just part of your light that shows through. You're honestly connected to everybody, wanting them to shine their light. That it's just a
Thank
natural
you.
part of who you are, Kimberly. And so that's such a great suggestion. Now, so if somebody starts doing the journaling, they start feeling more confident, they're keeping some of the stories, then that linking to how it relates to your business feels a little sticky.
Let me give you a few reasons why stories work well and how you can link them back to your business. Because when you start to see where the story, because then you can fill in that gap where that story can
Mhm.
link back to your business. The first is that stories are really vulnerability meets the short form entertainment, but without that humiliation. You don't have to share everything in your life. I don't talk about politics intentionally. I just started talking about my faith, and I'm happy that I have, but those are 2 points where you can choose if you want to share, if you don't want to share.
Mhm.
The other thing is sometimes people don't want to share what they eat. They don't want to share their fitness routine. You don't have to share anything you don't want to share. So you have permission to choose what you share and what you put out there. Never, ever make someone feel like you have to weigh in on a political event that's happening or something like that. If that's going to hold you back from sharing your story, just say, you know what, I just don't talk about it. That's just not something I want to talk about.
Mhm.
But I do want to talk about this. I do want to talk about how it relates to your business. If you're a chef or a seamstress and you want to share recipes or patterns, that's what you want to share. And you can be vulnerable in sharing those and have these stories about this time I was cooking this in the kitchen. And you know what? I set off all my smoke detectors. And so if you have to, it's okay. That's the vulnerability that can be entertaining because now you
Mhm.
just laughed because it's something that's
Yeah.
relatable. I have
We've all
certainly
done
set
it.
off.
Yeah, me
Yes,
too.
we all have. You can relate to that. And now you have that connection. You don't need to know who I'm voting for in this election. You don't need to know who I'm voting for in the next election. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
What matters is these little blips in time that are real and lived, and they can relate back. Here's how I found to not set off the smoke detectors, for example. If anyone has that content, please send it to me because I don't know how to do that yet. I'm not great at it. But that's the kind of the vulnerability where you can take the vulnerability, but then apply the lesson to it. The other thing is you get to take the loneliness out of doing business and the loneliness
Mhm.
out of writing. You get to apply this back to your audience because it is that, like I was talking about earlier, the one-to-one approach. You're sitting
Mhm.
there talking to one reader. What is that one thing you'd want your friend to know that if you're having a conversation with them? And now you're telling a story, but then this is what I want you to walk away with. This is what I really hope that you've heard from my story. And that takes the loneliness out of the conversation, but it also applies that lesson to it. So you have an authentic connection that really can be used to be actionable.
Mhm.
Actionable. I love a good alliteration.
Actionable. I like that. I just forgot how to pronounce it, but it's
It is a mouthful.
I want to touch on something. You highlighted the loneliness from solo entrepreneurship. It's a big part of why communities where you have to find your other peeps,
Yeah.
where you're able to do that. And I've noticed that you do that very well. You are really good at growing a community. And what have you noticed in the benefits of growing that community as an entrepreneur and to help conquer that loneliness?
I had to get really lonely, put myself in uncomfortable positions. You have to take that action. When I first started in entrepreneurship, I joined the Chamber of Commerce in our town. I remember walking into that first breakfast, not knowing anybody, a new entrepreneur, feeling like the imposter syndrome is very real, especially in those beginning stages. We all have experienced it. Everybody has. So I'm walking in, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anybody in this room. And it was so intimidating. And so I walked straight back to the coffee maker and I drink my coffee black. I don't like cream or sugar. It's just straight bean juice for me. Standing there like hovering over it as if I'm making this like Starbucks level concoction. And I was not. I just wanted straight coffee. But I was just waiting for someone to spark that conversation. And I remember that feeling of, you know what? I when I started to get to know people, someone did spark that conversation, introduced me to others. And I remember being so grateful for that. And so as I progressed in my career and I started communities specifically, and I started dabbling in growing my own communities and networking in other communities, I remember just being so grateful for having someone say, hey, I'm so and so. I'd love to get to know you. And like just opening the door to that conversation. I want to be that person who opens the door to conversation. And that's a great part of content marketing is you get to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
then you get to form those relationships. But then I also remember someone saying, hey, you should really meet this person over here. There's nothing in it for them. They were not going to buy from me. I was not going to buy from them and just wanted to form those genuine connections and introduce and make that introduction. I was so happy. And so as you start to share your story, you're going to cement yourself in people's minds so that when you're not in the room, but
Mm-hmm.
they're meeting someone else and they're like, gosh, you know what? You really need to go talk to Debbie. You really need to go listen to her podcast because she's got great insights and hit reply on her emails because she'll write you back. And it opens the door to those conversations and you create this network around you of people who through your own giving it always comes back to you and you might not be able to see it immediately but it
Mm-hmm.
always comes back to you because as you make those connections people are going to remember you more and then they're going to want to introduce people to you and it's just so circular and reciprocal that it's beautiful and easy by just being human and saying you should talk to this person, they know something that I think you'd really benefit from. And
Mm-hmm.
then you build community.
Yeah, it's so important. I'm so grateful for this platform, the podcast. I have met people I would have never met. And so many of my guests have referred me over to somebody else who they believe would be a good match. And they are.
Yeah.
And you feel like it's like a real connection no matter what. And that support. I find it's important too that like when you did something really, a workshop yesterday. And so I went to your social just to go check it out and just to support it. Whether I was part of the workshop or not, wouldn't if it didn't fit my calendar, but at least I can show that support that you're not alone.
Yes. And it goes such a long ways.
Hmm.
And that's what I think people don't realize is sometimes we're hesitant to hit the like button or we're hesitant to comment because we're not ready to
Hmm.
buy. Talked about the
Hmm.
know and trust factor earlier, and I want to go back to that because the progression, I love customer journey mapping. It's fascinating how the mind works and how we make buying decisions. Yes, you have to establish that know and trust, but the reality is when people are first experiencing something, they often don't even know they're experiencing that pain point or problem to look for your solution.
Hmm.
And the reason why having that strong story, having that strong core content is so powerful and having a good network of people, this is what made me think of it, who will like your stuff, who will like your content, who will share it and say, I don't know who needs to hear this, but I feel like it's really good and it deserves to get a little bit of light shown on it, even if it's not for me right now, it might be for somebody else, or to tag somebody in the comments. It's because those seeing it for the first time or being tagged might not be aware this is something they need. But then when you have those emotional moments, they can say, oh my gosh, I do feel lonely in my business. And I wonder why that actually is. And what is it that I need to do to overcome that? Maybe I need to start sharing my story. Maybe that wasn't on my radar as something that would help me get out of loneliness, but I
Hmm.
just know what I feel. Every single decision that we make starts in the center of our brain, which is where the emotions are housed. It's called the hippocampus or the limbic system. And again, not a neuroscientist, just very fascinated by this. They've done studies on stroke victims who have had that particular part of their brain where their emotional response system is housed impacted by the stroke.
Hmm.
And suddenly making a very simple decision about do I want a Coke or a Pepsi becomes enormously difficult because they don't know how they're going to feel on the other side of that. They don't know how they're going to feel. Do I like Coke or do I like Pepsi? I don't remember what made me excited about one particular brand over the other. Little things. What kind of pizza do I want to order? Do I want pizza or do I want a salad? I don't know. Because you'd forget how it makes you feel. These
Hmm.
stories are so powerful because they remind us of how we felt in those moments. When you can use those stories to crack open that door, you can start by resolving a feeling like loneliness, like hunger, like satisfaction. And then suddenly people are like, oh my goodness, that's a problem. I didn't know I had it, but now I know how to put words to it. What's the solution? And they start going deeper and deeper with you because now they're like, this person knows how I'm feeling and they're offering a solution. They're becoming aware of their solution. They're probably still going to do that logical sequence of going
Mhm.
out and trying to look at the competitors and see what other options are available. But you've been the one to cement that feeling in their heart and in their mind. They're going to come back to you. Even if they do choose to go to a competitor, they're still going to remember you and they might go to you at a future date. It doesn't,
Mm.
that part doesn't matter, but you're getting them on that trajectory. And then ultimately, and hopefully, they're going to buy from you because now you're the one that's led them to, I know how you're feeling, and this is a solution to help you overcome this. And then you can do your research and find what's best for you. But hopefully, I would love for you to work with me, whoever it is. You want them to ultimately work with you, but then that's what gets them to buy because they're like, you know what, this person understands me and I
Mhm.
get it and they get me.
Yeah, one of my previous guests, Joanne, had talked about where you want not only, and I think this is a common thing when entrepreneurs are starting, is they just want the business. But really, you want the aligned clients that are that are aligned with you and your uniqueness. And so if you don't show the uniqueness, or if you're just really vanilla, they're not going to get to know you at all.
Yeah. And that's the fun thing about these stories, the little tiny moments. If you're a mountain biker or you live in Arizona, like we talked about the monsoon rains,
Mm-hmm.
these little things start to connect you a little bit deeper. But if you're vanilla and you don't know where I live, you don't know that I like mountain biking, you don't know that I'm a mom, you don't know that I'm starting my homeschooling journey, you don't know like all these little things about me, it's harder to form that connection. If I just tell you I write content, okay.
Yeah.
That feels
Mm-hmm.
drab. And this is also, by the way, where I think it's one of the hardest things for us to do is to answer the question, what do you do for a living? And that's why it's hard because we feel we know how good it is what we offer, but
Mm-hmm.
how do I put it succinctly and in a way that's not going to sound vanilla? If I say I'm a copywriter and content marketer, I feel robotic and boring. I'm not boring. I'm anti-boring. And I want people to know if you're going to work with me, we're going to have fun together. And there's going to be personality. And I'm going to strong arm you into getting over all those cliches and all that jargon
Mm-hmm.
because that's not what gets found. One of my favorite copywriting tips, to your point about sounding vanilla and worrying about sounding vanilla, is to go through your content. First, always just write the first draft. Just get it out of your mind. Just get it onto the screen. Use that framework that we talked about with the story, the takeaway, and the call to action. Then reread it and use your highlighter. If you want to print it out, use an actual highlighter, mentally highlight it, use your cursor, however you want to do it. But highlight those cliches, highlight that jargon where it sounds just, is this what I'd actually say in person?
Mm.
Is terms that get glossed over, people forget. I've seen 1,000 times, they'll never pinpoint you. Replace them with something exciting, something they can tangibly touch. This is what I always do in my content is I will go through and I'll say, think about during COVID, everyone's wash your hands for 20 seconds, wash your hands. We heard it a
Mm-hmm.
million times. At some point, you're like, I feel like not washing my hands just to prove
Yeah,
you
be a
wrong.
rebel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I never actually did that. I still wash my hands. But there was also, so you saw that sign ever, wash your hands. And then I saw a sign that said, like you're about to put in contacts and just got done cutting jalapenos. Now you can feel your eyes burning,
Yeah.
like, okay, I get it. Yes, I'm going to wash my hands. It makes sense to me. And you
Mm-hmm.
will remember that because it's something that puts you in that moment and it's very specific. So I have a lot of examples that I can share, specific copywriting that's also inside the content club of just like, how do I take this and make it sound more compelling and not as vanilla? That's a great way to do
Mm-hmm.
it. If you're starting out, highlight those
Oh,
terms and
yeah.
replace them.
Yeah. I was just thinking of rain, right? Like how
Yeah.
the rain smells here in the Arizona desert versus the Colorado rain has a different smell in the afternoons during the summer, as well as Wyoming. And then when I lived in Northern California, it doesn't rain during summer. When traveling to Arizona, right? They're going to see the Grand Canyon, and all of a sudden your beautiful day is the monsoon comes. and you remember it's a really distinct smell
Yeah.
in each of those states, which all have similar weather patterns. It's a different smell that you can't quite come to words with. I smell a lot of sage in Wyoming when I was there.
Uh-huh. Oh,
You know,
interesting.
it's a wet, like sage smell because there's a lot of wild sage versus here, it feels more earthy here in the Prescott area. It's very earthy smell and but still refreshing. And Colorado had a completely different, it's some type of tree smell that I would pick up on. I don't know what it is, but they all were unique. In Colorado, I could open the windows to get that smell in the house, but in Arizona, I would never open the windows because the rain is coming so hard and
Yeah.
every direction you would like you would have a puddle in 10
Right.
minutes and then it's gone.
That's such a
Oh.
great analogy that you just offered of how we can take something that can maybe sound a little bit vanilla, rain, because rain is different everywhere. And how can you make it unique to you?
Mm.
I love that example.
If somebody is still feeling uncomfortable after these tips, what would you offer them to help them get started?
Life Fest is to hit publish, just get started. We're living in a time where we have such a gift of having so many different platforms that can help you to get started for for free.
Hmm.
So, for example, I'm on Substack and the free publishing platform. You can start sharing your ideas and see what happens. And some are going to be great and some are not going to be great. You're going
Hmm.
to get subscribers, you're going to hear what resonates and gather data. I love my data. I
Hmm.
love feedback. You have to get on that feedback loop. You're going to see people responding, resonating,
Hmm.
or get trolls. And that's okay. Now you know who your people are not. You will feel something inside when they respond where you're going to say, that felt really uncomfortable and really terrible. But also, I stand firmly in what I believe because that's not okay. Here's an example of that storytelling. Um, I was on Reddit earlier today and I found myself in the writing thread. I'm not on Reddit very often, so I don't know what they're called, but I was in one of these forums where they're talking about writing. And this person asked they wanted a different analogy than the one that kept coming to mind. They're just asking for some feedback. And they got just harassed. And people are like, if you're really a writer, you would know. And the way that they were forming these responses was gross to me. I hated it because I thought we're bullying someone who's just living their craft. And sometimes we all have these moments of, like, I can't get past this thought and I need help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. You can
Hmm.
absolutely be a good writer and make mistakes. You can absolutely be a good writer and want help getting through an analogy that feels not great and you know it can be better, but you're having a hard time finding it. And it just bothered me so much. When I say, when you put yourself out there and the trolls come, I now know I am that much more confident. I will encourage people to share their voice, make mistakes, and make typos. I'm okay with that because I think that's how we get the real you. I'm an advocate for not
Hmm.
these prim and proper, holier than thou people who are over there trying to pretend they're better than the other person when they're just asking for some help. How
Hmm.
bizarre to me. That's how you're going to spend your time. That's just, there's my soapbox. When you feel yourself getting on that soapbox, you know you're onto something. So do it more. Get out there more, push yourself more and put it out there because you know there's going to be a lot of people who are coming to this person's defense like, what are you doing? This is mean. We're not mean here. Just encourage them, offer help. That's all she was asking for. You start to form your community, see how they're reacting.
Hmm.
Let that feedback loop be positive. Even if it feels negative, let it be positive. Be like, nope, I'm onto something here. The world needs more of that. We need more advocates for people to share their voice without apology and share their ideas without fear. So what if I make a typo? I do it all the
Yes.
time. I'm a
Yes.
professional writer, best-selling author. I make typos all the time, and I don't care.
I think if somebody's the grammar king or queen, they don't want to read my content
I'm not for
because
you. Move
I'm not
along.
I'm not there.
Yes,
I have a
bless and
master's
release.
degree and I can't catch them all. I'm into what I'm feeling as I'm writing
Yes.
it. And if that's what they're going to get stuck on and say, okay, just unsubscribe or
I'll
it's
do
just,
it for you.
yeah.
I've done it for people.
Yeah. I love that because we do need to all shine our light. We do all have stories. We all have stories that matter, that will impact somebody else's life to believe in themselves, start seeing their own worth. And and just simple compassion for us all having this beautiful human experience on our journeys. And if we don't start, you can't get better.
Exactly.
And you just want to
Exactly.
get away from those coulda, woulda, shouldas.
Or get more confident in how we're
Mhm.
approaching our story and message.
Yeah, that was just all great. Such great wisdom that you're sharing with us, Kimberly. Kind of want to move us into the two questions that I ask all my guests. And the first one is, I'm a huge lover of music. And I believe
Same.
music can change everything, can change your mood, lift you up on those days that you're getting stuck. Or actually, when I'm being creative, I always have classic R&B on in the background, right? So I'm always curious to find out, what's your go-to song that inspires you and lifts you up?
Yeah, I have two. It depends on my mood and how I want to be lifted up in that moment. So one of them is Thunder by Imagine Dragons, which
Mm,
is all about this boy who's like, you didn't think I was going to be anything, and now I'm something, and look at me now.
mhm,
And I just love that story because through the song, and it's just got like a good rhythm to it. My boys like it too. So if we're just having a day, we put it on and we all just sing it in the car, and it's fun. And it gets us happy. Yeah. I I can do things. I can do the hard things.
mm,
So I like that one. But if I'm in more of an introspective, and like I said, I talk about my faith a lot in my writing. And so one of my favorite songs is Gratitude by Brandon Lake. One of the lines is in the song is, there's a lion inside of those lungs. And I just love that. So we've got this line that's just waiting to come out. And I don't know, there's just such power behind that.
mhm,
And it also is a very humbling song. It is easy, like I was saying, to get on your high horse and to just stand firm in your beliefs, but also to know that you're not alone in that. And so if you are a faithful person, then that to me is very powerful because
mhm.
I feel humbled and also feel very supported at the same time. So it's just this big swirl of encouragement that I love.
Oh, I'll have to look that song up. I'm familiar with the Imagine Dragons song because I
Yeah.
already want to start bouncing my head to it. And I'm adding all of these on the YouTube playlist,
Oh,
and
cool.
it is full of different genres, powerful songs, softer songs, and both will perfectly fit into this mix people can play to get them going. Whatever songs they don't care for, they can just forward through, right? And
Exactly.
it's really becoming a beautiful playlist.
Oh, I
I'll
bet.
add those. So the second question that I'm always just so curious to find out, in this season of your life, if you could go back with what you know now and talk to your younger self about your own worth, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I would tell myself, you don't have to be everything to everybody. I'm an only child, which means I'm a chronic perfectionist and people pleaser to a fault. And I wish I still struggle with removing that. And I wish that I could be okay with my mistakes and like more okay with the mistakes. I encourage typos. I appreciate when I see people make mistakes and they own it and are like, whoops, here's what I learned from it. But I struggle sometimes with myself doing that and giving myself that grace. And I've come a long ways, but especially as a girl, I was quiet. I didn't want to share my voice for that reason. I didn't want to speak up. I was shy. And it took it actually took me moving overseas and totally separating myself from everything, including language. I shouldn't say totally separating because I still visit my parents and have a great relationship with them, of
Yeah.
course. But even speaking a different language, where I finally was like, hold on, this feels right. And this feels like my voice and this feels like me. But it took getting out of that comfort zone to do and to really be like, okay, I know who I am now. But I was also okay with not being everything to everybody. And that was such a
Mhm.
pivotal moment of when I was like, this is not what I thought life was going to be like. And I don't have to be perfect and I don't have to be all buttoned up and my makeup can be a mess. I don't have to wear makeup every day. I'm okay with that
Mhm.
too. So yeah, just don't try and be everything to the world. Just be you. And I know it's so cliche, but it it does matter. And when you can actually feel that, and
Mhm.
also you only get one life. It's been hitting me hard lately. This is one life, and I want all the experiences. We say yes to everything. A big reason we homeschool is we get to say yes to more, and we
Mhm.
also get to say no to the things that are just not working. And so we get to really shape this life that we want. And the ability to do that is so freeing, and it is so empowering that we get to go out and live really cool things and do really cool things, even if it's as simple as going mountain biking after dark one time, which I still have not done because I'm a little scared of it, but we're gonna do it sometime. Like little things like that, or
Mhm.
just soak it up. Say yes. Except for to skydiving, I will not do that.
Oh,
That's my hard line.
I did it once. I'm afraid of heights.
Would you do it again?
It really helped me for a long time. I think I
Okay.
still had some fearlessness, a different
Hmm.
fearlessness of this one life. Now I'm like, oh, I don't know if I could actually do it. Maybe I could. I went zip lining in Thailand. It was very high and terrifying after the second thing. I don't know what those are. When you go from one tree to the other, they're very small because this is in Thailand. It's secure, but you really test that trust factor. So
Yes.
maybe I would, right? Maybe in the right circumstances with the right group of people, just like I did the first time. You know,
Yeah.
we spent half the day training and we were double grouped up, right? We had two parachutes. Maybe there's my answer, right? I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I faced
Good.
that fear. I would encourage you to do that.
Skydiving. I've taken a step.
Yeah. Kimberly, I've enjoyed this. How can people connect with you, Kimberly?
Come say hi to me over on Instagram. I'm at kimberly.crossland. Respond to my DMs. It's just me in there. So come say hello. Get on my list. If you go to kimberlycrossland.com, you can get on my list over there and hit reply to an email because I absolutely do love that. And
Mm-hmm.
also will respond there. And if you want some extra support, someone to give out those extra set of eyes, added frameworks, and all that, my love spot right now is the content club. I just adore what we're doing in there. So definitely come and consider joining the content club.
Mm, wonderful. Thanks again, Kimberly, for joining me. I've had such a good time and learned so much from you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. This has been great.